friends. Welcome to another episode of Brunch Talk by the DATEABLE podcast. We're your hosts, Yue and Julie. And during the week, we have our main episode on the DATEABLE podcast where we feature a story or an expert or a topic. And then for Brunch Talk, if you're new to this, we answer a burning listener question. These are burning. Yes. They're burning so bad. Herpes doesn't know what to do with them. That's
just like what you want to talk about over brunch.
But it's so nice to be back, and so nice that we keep these episodes going. We experimented with this in the beginning. This used to be part of our main episode in our intro. Mm-hmm. And then Julie had this brilliant idea of taking it out and making it its own. And I think it's working really well because then we can answer these questions in a more timely manner.
Yeah, and we go deeper. I think when they were in the main episode, it was definitely not 20 minutes that we talked about this. It was probably five.
Five, yeah.
So sometimes it just didn't do it justice, and it got lost in the shuffle. So calling it out has been a good thing. And what we've heard from you all, and keep the feedback coming with this, is that it's a nice little, it's like an appetizer. You get the appetizer, the small episode on Sunday. The full entree comes on Tuesday night, Wednesday, depending on your time zone.
There you go. Then what do we finish with dessert? Should we have a third show?
Maybe.
After dark?
We'll see what happens. Sounding board after dark. That's where it happens.
That could be an interesting spin-off show where we just talk about the most sexy and non-traditional topics or taboo topics. It's an idea.
I like this live brainstorming that's happening right now.
And then we air it like after midnight. On a Friday.
This is great. This is a peek for all of our listeners into you and I's daily conversation. What if we did this? What about this?
It's a good call out for anybody who's who's curious and been following our journey, is that we love creating content. That is our thing. And we want to keep creating content. So the podcast definitely is a piece of that. And we want to just do more. So, we can open this up to other people who want to brainstorm with us. If you have other ideas for content that we could be creating, you can always email us, hello@dateablepodcast.com, or you have a burning question, just email us there as well.
Yeah, and there may be a few things in the pipeline that we cannot disclose yet. Maybe.
So cryptic.
A few things up our sleeves. We'll just say that.
So cryptic. I hate it when we have a secret and we can't tell people. I hate that.
I know. Okay. Well, brunch is for secrets. You and I will go to our own brunch, but you can share your secrets at your brunch. And this question today I think has definitely been at our brunch before. We have spent hours talking about this topic.
Almost every brunch. Yes, almost every brunch. You and I, and also brunches with other people. This is the burning question of modern dating. And the question is, who should pay for the first date?
Yes, and for more context, the submission we got, I recently went on a great first date with a guy. We had a really fantastic time together. He found a new restaurant in town, and both the drinks and conversation was flowing. But then when the bill came, he didn't offer to pay. And when I suggested splitting, he graciously took me up on it. Now I'm feeling turned off. Should I be feeling this way?
Did I write this question?
Yes.
Was that me from 10 years ago?
From 10 years ago. No. Signed Yue Shu.
Yeah. Because that sounds exactly like me 10 years ago. And Julie knows this so well. I used to have very strict ideas on who should pay for dates, these gender roles that have been ingrained into my head for decades. I wanted to act out these, societal norms in my head. So I always felt like the man should pay for the first date and subsequent dates. I've since changed my tune, thank goodness. But ultimately, this question is about intentions behind dates. So I truly believe that both people going into a date both people should have the willingness to pay for the date because they
Mm-hmm.
are so excited to spend time with this person. But if we're falling back on a general rule, the one that I've found to work out pretty well is whoever asks out the person, whoever's doing the asking out, will ultimately pay for the first date.
I am so mixed on this one. I feel like this one tears at me all the time
It's so hard.
because for multiple reasons. I think in theory, it doesn't make sense that you wouldn't split it. And like even I was thinking
Mm.
like for this example, okay, this person the man in this is a hetero situation suggested this restaurant, so he should pay because he doesn't know her financial situation. He picked
Mm-hmm.
it, and there is a side of me that doesn't believe that because at the beginning of a relationship, you don't really know where someone is. But then
Mm-hmm.
so that would follow the logic that you just said, whoever plans it should pay for it. But then on the other side is a lot of times it's collaborative. Sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
one person throwing it out that we should meet up, the other person kind of riffing off that, and then you find a plan. Like who in that case would pay? That's it just gets a little hairy, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other side of it is, if you really want an equal partnership, like why are we holding dating to different standards?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we feel like one person should own the finances if that's really what a modern relationship is that we want? Of course, if that isn't what you want, then maybe you have different views on this. But we hear all the time people that say the number one thing to me is an equal partnership, yet, like this submission, get upset when the person does not pay. The man does
Mm-hmm.
not pay. And it's such a double standard. And I'm not saying it talking down because I've been here myself and there
Yeah.
is this feeling of like ick in a way, but where is that coming from? It's coming from society. It's coming from the fact that we were told that this isn't how it is, like that, like men pursue women, but all this stuff is so outdated, yet we
Yeah.
hang on to it. And I think, especially like our generation, that's kind of like at the cusp of more modern and traditional, really struggles here because you kind of have these counter thoughts going at all times. So I
Yeah.
think it's how do we, break away from what we think we want or what we think should happen to getting to the root of why is this happening and like what does this actually mean? Because sometimes it's not always what we think should happen is what's actually best for ourselves, finding a partner and a budding relationship.
And that's the most dangerous part is when you set up yourself for disappointment. You expect
Mm-hmm.
one thing and the person who is expected to read your mind does not do the thing that you want them to do, and then all of a sudden you're no longer attracted to them. I've been there so many times where I expect someone to do something and they don't do it, and then my vagina's dry because I'm like, ugh, no longer interested. I personally feel like this is how do you view first dates? What if we viewed first dates as mini celebrations, like a person's birthday or like an event that you want to celebrate? It is sort of a celebration because you're celebrating the fact that you're meeting a person that you have really jived with or would like to spend more time with them. So if we're seeing it as a more of a celebration, I think there is something really cool about whoever's initiating this to say, I want to take you out for this thing, for this meal, this coffee, this drink. That shows to me as the receiving end that you are the one that's taking control of this and you are the one paying, in some respect. I would do this with friends too. If it's your birthday, let me take you out for your birthday.
Mm-hmm.
That's very clear that I'm paying for it. It does make sense to make this clear at the beginning of the date. So there's no, when the bill comes, I don't know, should I not? Just make it clear. If you're the one initiating, just make it clear to the other person that you are the one taking them out for that date. But when the bill does come, it goes back to my first point is both people should have the intention of paying. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not the fake for purse reach that I've done in the
Right.
past. And then you go, oh, you actually do want my credit card? It's a very authentic willingness to pay for that meal or whatever, that check. And when the other person does pick it up, to show that appreciation. also
Mhm.
a mistake I made in the past, that I was just an entitled little bitch, just like, yes, you
Yep.
should pay, without saying thank you. Just really show that appreciation.
So here's the problem, though. I agree with everything you said foundationally, but
Hmm.
everyone views dates so differently,
So
right?
differently. Yeah.
Like a lot, I could see people saying, well, if I just met up with a friend, we would split it. I wouldn't, pay for their coffee, or I wouldn't pay for their drinks. And I think what you're saying is it's more of a celebratory event. But other people could say, a first date isn't even a date, it's a meet,
Yeah. Yep.
and it's super casual. And, in today's world, I think the world when men always paid, they were probably going on a lot less dates, let's be honest.
Mm.
And women did not have the same financial means. So there's so much
Hmm.
different. The fact that we're actually still hanging on to this archetype is actually really fucked when you think about it, because we're in a
Yeah.
totally different world. And like, why is it fair that like if you're thinking this is just a first meet, and like men have, I don't know, 10 of these lined up in the next month, like should they have to pay for every last one? Like that's kind of messed up when you think about it. And I think, we could make the argument that that's that's how you date, is, not doing that and building each one to be more of an event. But let's be honest, like people all date differently, and it's so hard to know on date one how this person operates and what else is going on for them. You don't know their
Hmm.
financial situation, you don't know their dating style, you don't know how modern or traditional they are. I mean, sometimes we've heard from men too, it's like, I don't want to like offer because that's actually insulting to modern women that are
Hmm.
equals. It's just so hard to know. And I think we really, what I gather from all of this is that we can't, like, if everything else on the date was wonderful, like, don't let this be the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't let this be the thing, but I would also say it does make you more discerning in dating. Maybe you don't have 10 dates lined up because you are the one doing the asking out. Maybe you don't want to pay for all those dates. It does make you a little bit more careful about who you pick to go on dates
Mm-hmm.
with. For me, this is just personal opinion. I don't like splitting the bill with my partner.
Mm.
It does, to me, splitting the bill is a very to me, okay, personally, it's when you don't split the bill is one step away from being platonic. So my partner and I do not split the bill. We just take turns picking up the check, or take turns, getting things for each other, because it's that 80/80 rule. Is like you keep
Mm-hmm.
wanting to do these things for your partner. So maybe in dating, if we can see it more as not so much tit for tat, but more like I'm more than willing to do this, and more than willing to pay for this. Maybe that's just a better way of looking at it, so that you're not like keeping tabs on people. I've told you this story, Julie. I've had friends who've been on dates where afterwards she didn't want to go on a second date with him, and he
Yeah.
Venmo
Venmoed. Yep.
requested her for half of her wine during
Oh
happy
my
hour.
gosh. That's so
I've also
bad.
had friends who went out to dinner with someone, and he picked up the check, and afterwards when they went out for tea, he got the tea and he made her pay for it, because he's like, I got dinner, so you're gonna get my tea, which is kind of weird because she didn't get any tea at all. Just stuff like that. I'm like, it's because we're so petty with this stuff that it
Yeah.
becomes that tit for tat. What if we're just more than willing to financially invest in
Be
the other
generous.
person? Maybe we don't get into this weird funk that we're in.
It's just everyone is so different with
Everyone's
money
so different.
too. Because then you
Yeah.
could get resentful too if you're always the
Yes.
one doing it. And, I've definitely had my share of situations where the check got really awkward. I remember,
Yeah.
you know, getting in line for, I had a date like at a coffee place, and him basically being like, you go first, order yours, and then I'll order mine. I'm like, it's like a $2 coffee we're talking
Yeah.
about. And
Yeah.
I think there are situations like that. You're just like, wait, like, why is this so tit for tat? But
Yeah.
then, on the other side, I also had this situation once that similar to the person that wrote in, of like being invited to this restaurant. I
Mm-hmm.
was not like working. Had a startup at the time, so I was not like had the income I normally did. Like for
500
me,
brunches. Speaking of brunches.
For like me going out for a $60 dinner, that's like what it was, maybe even a little more with tip and stuff. Like that was not an everyday thing at that stage of my life. And I wanted to reserve that for like friends and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And when this person invited me to this restaurant, it didn't actually even cross my mind that I'd be on the hook for half of it. So there was that. And then I remember also in this period, there was another time that I went to this wine bar and it ended up being super expensive. And we did
Hmm.
like that, you know, oh, like he offered first. And I was like, no, like I'll go half, hoping that he'd be like, no, no, it's okay. And then he's like, okay, but only because like you're bootlegging your startup right now, basically implying I had no money.
Ew.
And I was so turned off by that. Like he
Ew.
basically was like, I'm not gonna like let you share it. And then I got so turned off that I like insisted on doing it. And then I was like, fuck, this isn't really what I wanted to spend. And then I never wanted to see this person again. So it just was such a lose-lose. Like the entire thing ended up being a lose-lose mentality.
Ew. Ew. That's the other thing is when money gets brought up. Such a sensitive issue for some people too. I mean, I get very sensitive about it because it is like, are you implying that I can't afford this? Or are
Yeah.
you implying that you're better than me because you make
Right.
more or you can't afford this? So ultimately, this is such a tricky position we're in, but all you can do is control yourself. So if you find yourself in that position that Julie just described, you get invited to this restaurant that's really nice and maybe you don't want to spend the money going to that restaurant, always maybe just have the intention that you're going to pay for at least your meal. And if that is the case, you just suggest another restaurant that is
Mhm.
more affordable or suggest something less than a dinner. At least you can control that aspect of yourself,
Yeah.
right? Right?
I mean, I think that should be a given personally for many reasons. I'd say even this dinner, I remember just being like, oh my God, this is so long and painful. So, like, even aside from
Yeah.
the money, I would say any first date, like, keep it to something that's generally affordable for both parties, right? Coffee and tea, that's generally, gonna be $5 and
Yeah.
under. Like, that's, or something free. Like, there's so many options, but also even drinks, you can at least control how much you have. Like someone that
Yeah.
is more conscious can just have one versus, having tons and tons and having the check add up. But when you're at dinner, it's kind of just like, it's going to be a certain amount of money no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's something really freeing as a woman, I gotta say, about wanting to pay for the date. And, since I've changed my tune in the last couple years, the last few dates that I went on, I would go to the bar first and just put on my credit card and tell the
Mm.
guy just put it on my tab. It just felt so empowering to do that. And mm, and all of the men that I went on dates with during this kind of scenario would always say, "Let me take you out to dinner next time," or "Let me do
Interesting.
this next time." It just felt like a more giving attitude versus
You
like,
know,
"Ooh, what are you taking away from me?"
it totally is, but as you're saying it, I'm like, I would never do that ever. And I think it's because of gender roles, It's like I feel like I wouldn't want to like put it in this fat that I'm now the provider and taker. Like I
Yeah.
think for me, I view it differently, and this is again
Hmm.
why this is such a challenging topic. And I feel like, people are probably like open this episode or started listening to this episode for a clear-cut answer, and we're sorry we're not really giving you that because there are so many layers to it. But I
Yeah.
personally, I feel like, yes, I like it like when there's times I treat and then they treat. And especially as you're in a more established relationship, there's going to be another time where it will even out. But
Oh,
I feel
it
like,
always evens out.
totally. But I think for me too, like I do like, just splitting it down the middle because then I don't
Hmm.
have to worry about it evening out
Hmm.
because it's not that I don't want to feel resentment that they're not paying enough, or I don't want to feel like I'm overpaying because of gender roles. But then, like I also don't want to take advantage of them. Like I just feel like there's so many complexities. So I think sometimes splitting it down the middle is just easier. And that's just
Well,
my point of view with it. Yeah.
maybe that is the answer that you all are looking for. So here's the answer. Let me see if I can synthesize this. It's go in on the date expecting to pay for half. Always have that expectation. There are no shoulds, but you can only
Yeah.
control what you do. So expect to pay half. And if the other person offers to pay for the whole thing, just be grateful and thank them. Right?
Yep. And then go
That's
on
all we can do.
dates that you're okay paying half on.
Yes. Yes. So if you go in the expectation you're paying half, that will dictate what kind of dates you go on
Yeah.
and the dates you accept. So yeah, I think that is the most clear-cut way to do this. Whether you did the asking out or they did the asking out, just expect to pay at least for half.
Yep. And I mean, this is definitely, I'd say, more geared to women because we are the ones that hold this expectation, the hetero side of women. It's so fascinating because I remember we had this episode. I don't know if you remember, we did it a long time ago with Aaron. He was like one of our first gay men that we talked
Yes.
to. And I remember you asking him about the paying, and he's just
Yeah.
like, this is so not an issue at all in gay dating,
I
like
know.
whatsoever. He's just like, why are you guys so obsessed with this? Like, this is not
So
even
true.
and it makes sense, right? Because the dynamic is different. But I think for, we also have all these unraveling of the things we've been taught for years
True.
past, like we were talking about. I think for hetero men, we hear this a lot of, I feel like they may be like women expect it, or I don't want to overstep if she's a feminist. Maybe it's just bringing those conversations up earlier on in the
Yeah.
date. Like, it doesn't need to be like, do you want me to pay for this? But it could just be like, what are your views on, courting or traditions versus modernness? I don't know. It's hard because, like, I would be, as I'm saying this, I'm like, I'd probably be like, yes, all for equality, but then still be like, I wish they paid.
I mean, the same. It's hard for us to unlearn the things that
Uh-huh.
we've been hearing all of our lives. So yes, there's still that gut feeling of like, ooh, I don't feel good about that. But at the same time, it all goes back to the intention.
Mm-hmm.
So if your intentions are aligned with the person you're with, then you can get over these humps. And I think there's something nice if, I don't know, I've never been on a date like this, but it'd be something nice if a guy said, I would like to pay for this. Are you okay with that? Right?
I was just
Like,
going to say that as we're talking about it. I think for hetero men, this episode hopefully makes you aware of all the thought processes that go on for women.
So
We've read too
complicated.
many bad books, bad Cosmo articles, like all of this stuff has been ingrained in us from a long time ago. I was
Yeah.
talking to one of our listeners recently and was talking about like how the woman was never making plans, so he ultimately decided to end it. And I was like, you have to
Yeah.
remember, we've been ingrained to like not to like pull back. And it may
Yep.
not be a reflection whatsoever on you. It just
Yep.
might be that this is what she thinks she should be doing in dating. So
Yep.
understanding where we've been is really important. It's kind of like all history, right? It's like you
Yeah.
need to understand where it all originated, where all this came from. And that doesn't mean that that's really what they ultimately want in a partnership, but there are these expectations, we'll keep using that word, that exist. And I think what you were just saying, Yue, like saying like being, I think it goes a long way, despite how modern women are, just to pay for the most
Yeah.
part. But
Mhm.
then having that openness at the end allows you to like, have that person say to you, actually, I do prefer to pay.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And then are you okay with that? Just get consent, around that.
That's better than, I think the "are you okay with that" is better than like, should we like the fake, like all of that's so
Oh, I hate the
performative, like the
I
fake
hate that fake
purse
shit.
grab and all this
Yeah.
stuff. Ugh, so
I
bad.
hate it. Because when you're in a relationship, none of that stuff matters. So why are we
No.
performing on a first date if you're trying to suss this person out for a long-term relationship? These are all bullshit things that we do. So just be open and honest and intentional about what you're doing. Now, for anybody who's going on a lot of first dates, here's my little tip because I just remember this. If you're the one doing the asking out, try to go to like a place where you know the server or bartender or owner, because they can give you some really great feedback about the people you're going on dates with. And sure, you can have a running tab there. It's fine. You pay for the date, but you get valuable advice and feedback. I used to go to this bar all the time for my first dates. And oh my gosh, Julie, the feedback I would get on the men I was seeing, it was astounding. I would go to the bathroom and I'd come back. And the bartender I would know, she'd be like, this is a no. So then I send him home and be like, okay, great. Thanks for the day. It was fun. And then I ask why. And she's like, he ordered 2 shots when you were in the bathroom. And then he said, never mind, just one. And he took 1 shot before you got back from the bathroom.
Oh my God.
Because he didn't want to pay for your shot. So bad. So bad.
That's
yes.
so bad. So bad.
So get who cares about who pays? Just get all the dirt, get info.
I think we're also like touching on something else is like, what does dating mean to you? Like you were saying earlier, is it a celebration? Is it just a meet? Just based on what it means to you, that's how you can set up your first dates. Like if it's purely a meet, don't go somewhere super elaborate. Like go somewhere that, is easy. And you can even say to someone like, hey, like, it's craziness of modern dating. Like I kind of treat the first date as a meet. And if we're down with it, I'd love to take you on like a great first date, the next one. So then they don't feel like you're cheap or whatever, but you also might not have to go and pay for 10 different people. Like if that's not how you're viewing dating.
Yeah. Love
Communication. It. We're afraid to talk about it. We're doing all these like fake reaches and, all this, like trying to like have someone read our minds and connect the dots and let's just be open with it. Like we don't need
none
to
of
try
that
to
shit matters.
play Nancy Drew and figure out if they're a feminist and want us to pay. Just ask.
Yeah, none of that shit matters when you're in a relationship. Just remember that.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing is like we need to remember a lot of this is ingrained in us and taking that, next step of being like, is this something I truly believe and is a core value to me versus something that's just been said that I think. Like I think a lot of us too, we got this message as young women of if they like you, they'll pay. But I don't know if that really is true anymore at all. So
it's not. It's not.
There's so many factors as we've been discussing. It's not just that one thing. So we need to really, take all this stuff and really break it down of where it's coming from.
Okay. Well, that was a very beefy brunch talk that we just did. So
I can't wait till this goes up in the Facebook group and Love at the Time of Corona.
The poll.
And there is some feedback and comments because like we're just 2 people and we had a lot of differences and we've played out all different scenarios. It runs the gamut. A lot of it.
Everyone has a very strong opinion about this.
I think ultimately though, it's a factor of finding someone compatible for you too. Like if you truly are a feminist and don't want someone to pay for you and the guy is more traditional and can't imagine a world where he isn't paying on the first date, there's probably some disconnect there.
Oh yeah. All right. Thank you for that question. It's a very, very good question. Keep the questions coming. Again, you can email us hello@dateablepodcast.com or DM us on Instagram @dateablepodcast. We love these questions. We can't say that enough. So keep them coming and we'll keep answering them. And they go out on Sundays and you can get a snippet of it on our Instagram and TikTok once they go out too.